Hello, everyone. This is Kerwin, and welcome to another episode of Travel Talk. And today we're going to be talking about which airline should I choose? There's so many airlines out there. So, which one should I choose to travel? Let's go. That is a pretty good question because there's so many airlines out there, right? And so what you have to do is it's very tough. So my background today is New York City. I was flying in a Blade helicopter going from Manhattan to JFK. It's a very quick ride, actually. I'll leave a link that you can book if you need to. It was, I think, $195. It's one of those splurge things you do once or maybe twice. I think I have to go back because I wanted to get this view behind me, but I didn't. I had to like lean over to the person next to me and take that picture. Uh, but I need to go back and do that. But that's a whole other story to talk about Blade, which I may actually do a video on. I should do a video on Blade. Uh, but today we're going to talk about if you live in a particular city, which airline do I choose? I mean, it's a very, very tough question. And somehow, I don't know how the media folks do it, but as soon as I get on camera, I get an itch. Always. I'm not itching before, but as soon as I step in front of the camera and turn the camera on, itch galore. But anyway, so the idea is if I live in New York, which airline am I going to fly? Or if I live in Dallas, which airline am I going to fly? Or if I live in, say, Pittsburgh or a small city like San Antonio, or I should say a smaller city like San Antonio, or it's very difficult because every city is different and it also depends on you. So first you have to decide, am I going to be flying internationally or domestically? And this really doesn't matter where you live. I mean, if you live in a country where there's only one airline, then you're gonna have to fly that airline. Right? You don't really have a choice. Or there's one or two airlines, and then you kind of have to fly that one. You fly the one that has the most frequency. But if you live in a city where there are multiple airlines flying in, and I did a video on alliances, and you can look at that one, and they're from different alliances. Well, how do I know which one to fly? And the answer is not perfect, but it gives you some idea of what you really need to do. So first, you need to decide: am I going to be flying international or domestic? So if I'm just going to be flying domestic U.S., then maybe Southwest is a good idea because Southwest does have some good reward perks, like a companion ticket, where you can buy a ticket, you get a free ticket for a companion based on the ticket that you first ticket you bought. So that might be a good idea if you're only flying domestic. Now, Southwest does have international destinations, but they don't go to Europe. They don't go to Asia. They now go to Hawaii, which is not really international. It's still domestic. They do go to Puerto Rico, which is still domestic, and they go to some other Caribbean islands, such as Jamaica, which is international. And so if you want to if you only fly domestic and you don't really care about flying international, then maybe you want to accumulate your points with Southwest, which is totally fine. They have two bags for free still. JetBlue used to be, and of course, Southwest needs to fly to the city that you serve. I have a program that you can go in and type the name of the city, and they tell you all the airlines that serve that city. I put the link in the notes as well. There's also JetBlue. JetBlue is based in New York, but they don't have a hubs. They have what's called focus cities. So like Boston is a focus city for them. And you can fly. Now, JetBlue started out as a low-cost carrier. They're not a low-cost carrier anymore because now they fly to Amsterdam was their newest destination, which I think they did last week. There is Boston. I'm sorry, not Boston. There's London Gatwick, London Heathrow, and they also do Paris. So first they did London Gatwick, then they did Heathrow, then they did Paris, and now they do Amsterdam. So recognize that JetBlue is an option if you're going to fly to those places. Now, if the airline you're flying doesn't fly to other places you'd like to fly, you need to see if they have alliances with other airlines. So which means that if you're going to fly JetBlue, for example, and they used to have an alliance with Emirates, if you wanted to go to Dubai, you could have flown, you could take your JetBlue points, fly Emirates, and you'd get points. You could do that, or you could fly Emirates and get your JetBlue points, or vice versa. That doesn't exist anymore. That relationship died, and now Emirates is a partner with United Airlines. So if you want to go to Dubai, you can fly Emirates, which is an amazing product, or you can also fly United, because United now has flights to Dubai, and then you can get points. If you have the Emirates Skywards program, you can still get your points, and if you have the United Mileage Trust program, you can still get your points. You just need to decide when you make the reservation. You put the frequent flyer number in, and make sure you get your proper credit. Now, if you live in a place like New York, it's scary because every airline almost flies into New York. And so you need to decide, am I going to go with American, which is One World, or Delta, which is SkyTeam, or United, which is Star Alliance, or do I want to stick with JetBlue? So what you need to do is look and see which airline flies to the places you visit the most. And so if you find that Delta flies a lot of my destination, then choose Delta. Because Delta's hub is not, New York, I guess, is one of their hubs, but their main hub is in Atlanta. Some airlines, like I'm in Houston, I fly American. So if I want to go anywhere, I have to connect most of the times, because all the international, American doesn't fly out of here to any international city. I either have to go to Miami, Philadelphia, Charlotte, or Dallas, or JFK. And then I can go international, or Chicago, and then I go international after that. United is based here in Houston, so I can go pretty much anywhere in Mexico nonstop, a lot of places in South America nonstop, some places in Caribbean nonstop, some places in Europe nonstop, some places in Asia nonstop. So United might be a good choice for me. Otherwise, I have to connect over San Francisco, Chicago, Denver, Newark, Washington, Dulles. So I have, different, Cleveland used to be, but Cleveland is no longer a hub for United. So, and if I fly Delta, I have to connect in, I can't get anywhere international from here. I have to connect over JFK, Detroit, Minneapolis, Los Angeles, or Seattle, or Atlanta, which is their main hub. So that's the kind of stuff you have to think about when you want to say, well, which airline should I choose? I don't know which one to choose. Again, decide where you fly all the time. Do I want to fly domestic, or do I want to fly international? And sometimes you might have two airlines, because my primary airline is American at the moment. It used to be Delta, but they got on my nerves, so I said I'm out. I'm giving you a timeout, and so now American is my primary. But if American can't go where I'm going, or they're too expensive, which they are quite a bit, because they are with British Airways, and British Airways charges a surcharge. And I talked about one of the videos talk about surcharges, and the surcharge is quite hefty. And so coming out of London, or just going on British Airways, so then some of the fares are really high. But if I want to go to a particular place, and this airline, and I go to that particular place all the time, then I want to choose an airline that flies there. So if I want to go to, let's say I want to go to the Middle East, but the airlines that are in, let's say I'm in the SkyTeam Alliance, for example, I can get to the Middle East, although Delta doesn't fly to the Middle East at the moment. I don't think they do in the Middle Eastern cities, but their partners do. Air France does, and KLM does. So I could always connect to the Middle East using those airlines. Or American is the same. If I want to go to the Middle East, American isn't flying to the Middle East, but British Airways does, and Finnair does. So I can connect and do that. So it just depends on where you want to go, how frequently you want to go, and do you want to connect, or do you not want to connect? What you find mostly is that if I live in Atlanta, Delta. because Delta will get me to most everywhere when I go because they're based in Atlanta. If I live in New York, it's a little different because I have JFK, and so I can fly Delta or American out of JFK. I've got Newark, so I can fly United out of Newark. And then if I'm on the West Coast, well, before I get to the West, so you have those little choices there in New York. If I'm on the West Coast, it's a little different because I've got Alaska Airlines up in Seattle. But in LA, I have the big three again, Delta, American, United in Los Angeles. And if I'm in San Francisco, it's the hub for United. And so I've got Asia and all that going on there. If you're in Tokyo, you have a choice between ANA and Japan Airlines. So you pick whichever. They both typically fly to the same places. So you have to decide. If you're in Singapore, Singapore Airlines is the largest carrier there. If you're in Australia, you've got Virgin Australia and you've got Qantas. Virgin Australia, I think they kind of cut their international routes. So you kind of have to use Qantas, but you can also use Air New Zealand, which is based in New Zealand, but they have flights to New Zealand as well. So it just depends on where, if you're in the Middle East and you're in Dubai, Emirates is the big one, but if you're in Abu Dhabi, then Etihad is the main airline in Abu Dhabi. If you want to get between Abu Dhabi and Dubai to connect, there's a bus service that the airlines have. And when you buy the ticket, let's say Abu Dhabi to, let's say LA on Dubai, then you'll have to get a bus that goes from Abu Dhabi to Dubai and then Dubai to LA. And so that's the kind of, you kind of have to decide where you are. If you're in London, you've got Virgin Atlantic, you've got British Airways. So you can pick either one based on where they fly. British Airways and Virgin. British Airways has a larger network than Virgin Atlantic. So if you want to go to more places, then you'll probably choose British Airways over Virgin Atlantic. They're now two separate alliances. They were never together anyway, and they're fierce competitors. So British Airways is One World, and Virgin Atlantic is SkyTeam. And they're, like I said, they're very, very fierce competitors. They've always been. So you just need to decide. If you're in Frankfurt, you've got Condor, which is a domestic, mostly domestic. Well, I shouldn't say domestic. They're leisure carrier, and you've got Lufthansa that flies everywhere. And we talked about Singapore. If you're in Jordan, there's Royal Jordanian. They're the big carrier there. If you're in Oman, it's Oman Air. So it just depends on where you are. If you're in the Caribbean, it's a little bit tough because there is Caribbean Airlines and they serve much of the Caribbean. But the Caribbean is also, but they don't have a lot of international, international outside of the Caribbean. Then they go to Toronto and they go to the UK. Although I don't think Caribbean Airlines fly to the UK anymore. But I do Toronto. So you do get the Caribbean is kind of where they're concentrated. They used to fly to London, but I don't think they do it anymore. So that's the kind of stuff you have to think about when you're deciding, well, which airline should I choose? And make sure you have a primary and then your secondary. Now, sometimes it depends on the agreement that if you work for a company, it depends on the agreement that your company has with that particular airline or whatever your company's travel policy is. So always look on that and make sure you abide by your company's travel policy. Otherwise, you will get in trouble. I think that kind of addresses all the big issues. So again, international or domestic, which is the biggest airline in your market and where do they go? And where do you want to go? Where do you go for work? Where do you go for business? And once you put all those together, then you can figure out what to do. But if you got questions, you let me know. I actually I can figure that out for you for a service, and just leave a note, and I'll be more than happy to help. This is Kerwin with Travel Talk. Talk to you soon.